the Krisus Bris of Noach and the Krisus Bris of Avram and Moshe Rabbeinu. The idea has to do with Zechronos, which is like, as we're soon going to explain, it's to like undo the Yiptер the Maxhaveru Beruchnius. That Beruchnius, spiritually, there was the Tzimtzum, Yipter the Maxhaveru. There was the Ein Sof left the empty place, and we have to do through Torah. We have to bring that back in through Torah and mitzvahs, and we still want to understand why it's Dvar Halacha. So we're explaining this with the idea of the Krisus Bris and the Zikaron, that the Zikaron is about bringing the Chayas into the world. So first of all, we said that there's the Zikaron concerning Noach. The Zikaron of the Krisus Bris of Noach, as we mentioned also in the Psukim of Zechronos and Rosh Hashanah, that's about the kiyum of the world, the existence of the world, begashmias, the physical existence of the world, that there should be able to be the world go on. That has to do with the chitzonius of the yichud of Chachma Bina. But then there needs to be a higher level. And that is also the concept of a bris bein absarim, that even though externally they've been separated, but internally they are connected now as what they are really one. So now we're holding on line 20 on page 9, Yud Gimel of the Maimer. So we spoke about Yichud Chitzoni, that should be Kiyum's Kol Seder Ishtalshlos. That has to do with Noach. Now we're going to talk about Avram and Moshe. Avram, which is actually in this week's Parsha. But there's also the inner level of Zikaron, the inner connection between the world, Yidden and the Eibishter. That's what it means. Yala Zichronechem Lefonai. Lefonai does not just mean in our presence, but Lefonai means in the Pnimius, internally. It should be an inner connection, an inner Zikaron, an inner bris. Shalzeh hoisa Krisus bris to Avram, Krisus bris to Moshe, for a Zikaron Pnimi. That was the Krisus bris of Avram and Krisus bris to Moshe. And again, Zikaron is the end part. Zoichereyu is about the connection between them, the remembrance. Like it's explained in a different Maimer at length. The difference between the Krisus bris that Hashem made with Avram Avinu and the Krisus bris that Hashem made with Moshe Rabbeinu. Krisus bris to Avram hoisal Torah v'Eretz Yisrael. The one that Eibishter made with Avram Avinu was forgiving them the Torah and forgiving the Yid in Eretz Yisrael. Krisus bris to Moshe hoisa al inyan akshuva, top of page Yudaled, that Hashem promised the Yidden that even if chas v'sholem things are not done the way they're supposed to be done, still in all, we have the option of doing tshuva. This is what it says, that it says in Parshas Nitzavim, this covenant that I am commanding you today, it's referring to the covenant. This mitzvah is referring to what he was talking about earlier in the parsha. It's the mitzvah of tshuva. The koyal in that tshuva, she l'mayla Torah mitzvah. It's beyond and higher than Torah mitzvahs. Kimavur la'el, like it's explained in the previous mamorim that the Rebbe spoke about in that year, and especially when is this have this particular idea of the Krisus bris of Moshe Rabbeinu, b'frat b'arboim yom achronim, especially in the final 40 days of Moshe Rabbeinu being on Har Sinai, as opposed to the first 40 days and the second 40 days. That's from Rish Chodesh El till Yom Kippur. Then it was affected. The idea of Hashem forgave, like you spoke, or then in the last 40 days of Moshe Rabbeinu being on Har Sinai is emphasized this specific idea that Hashem promised Moshe Rabbeinu that Tshuva would help. Yet, even though we just now divided and said there's a zikaron pnimi, a zikaron chitzoni. One is for Noach that it should be that Yom V'Layla, Kayetz V'Chodev, the physical world should go on. The physical world should not stop. The whole Seder Shtalsha should go on. That's the Chitzonius. And then there's the Pnimius, but the ultimate is that one impacts the other. Amnam, he says in line 8, the purpose and the intention is from the inner remembrance, from the inner connection. There should be also the remembrance in the external. Through the fact that your remembrance will go up before me. And we said, for good, we said that this is lefonai. Lefonai means the remembrance in the pnimius level. Like we say at the conclusion of the bracha, that this is, what is the remembrance about? Remembrance of the bris, the covenant. Zai Chris's bris to Avram, Akshurim, Akedus Yitzchak, the Chris's bris to Moshe. It's remembering Hashem's bris that he made with Avram Avinu. That's also connected with the Akedah of Yitzchak, and also the Chris's bris that Avram made, that Hashem made with Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what we're so talking about. But it's not just enough to have this inner connection and this inner Chris's bris, this inner zikaron. But the hareza poil gam bezikaron b'chitzonius. This also impacts the external remembrance. Gam es noyach be'av zacharta. Also noyach, with love you remembered, because the bracha does not just talk about Avram and Moshe. The bracha also talks about noyach. How come? Because it's not enough to just have the internal. We need to have that the internal should impact the external. There should be also the remembrance for external things. To come down the entire chain order of descent, till very much below, with children and life and health and sustenance, and they should in a comfortable way. So that is the purpose of the zikaron, twofold. Zikaron pnimi, and that should manifest in the zikaron chitzon. So now the Rebbe is going to ask, seemingly, the zikaron pnimi is there nonetheless. The zikaron pnimi is always there. So he asks in Oizvav, line 19, the Indian explanation of this matter is the l'chura tzarich lahavim. Seemingly, we need to understand why is there a need to even daven and have the psuki zechroines and so on, to be able to have the inner zikaron, the inner connection. In the inner level, there is the will of Hashem's very essence, the Yifchar Lonvas Nachlasenus Go Yankov Choiv Sela, that he chooses us as his inheritance, the pride of Yankov that he loved forever. This will that Hashem desired and wanted the Jewish people is even higher than delight. There's a level of will which is caused by delight. Since I enjoy something, that causes me to want it. But when we're talking about the Bechira that Hashem chose the Yidden, the choosing of the Yidden and the will of Hashem and the Yidden is beyond even that most high level in the koiches of delight. Like it's explained in a different maimer, at length, that the will expresses and brings out more than the delight will bring out. That what the rotzen brings out, what the will brings out, it doesn't, the delight cannot do so. The delight cannot bring it out. This is also, there's a proof of this from the essential will that Yidden have. Kaviyachol, just like Hashem has an essential will and desire to be connected and to want the Yidden, so too there's a flip side. There's the Yidden's essential desire for Hashem. And that is also reveals things that are higher than the light. Like the Alter Rebbe stated, a Jewish person cannot be and doesn't want to be separated from godliness. That this will is a will of the very essence, until it actually brings a Yid to be willing to sacrifice in actuality, give up his life for this Ratzon. That shows that it's not a lower level of Ratzon, but it's a Ratzon of the very essence, and that's why he's willing to give up his life. And it's known the idea of self-sacrifice is only as a result of a will that's not connected with intellect. Intellect does not cause, does not obligate one, does not even allow for self-sacrifice. Intellect would say, you know what? Give up this time, give in this time, so you could live to, like the expression goes, to fight another day. Intellect does not tolerate Mesiras Nefesh. So therefore, how could it be that a person is willing to give up his life for the Eibishter? That comes because of a Ratzon Atzmi that's beyond Seichel. But over here we want to bring even more so. It's that Ratzon is even higher than the light. Even more so that this will of the Mesiras Nefesh of self-sacrifice does not even have the idea of the light. Even if there was delight and enjoyment, a person would not, because of delight, come to true self-sacrifice. To be able to come to amitis, to true self-sacrifice, literally willing to give up his life in actuality. Through an essential will. Not only is it not measured and limited by reason and intellect, even more so, it's not connected with the idea of delight. Therefore, so he goes on that and from this it's obvious that this is a will that's beyond the light that leads a person to Mesiras Nefesh. Therefore, can bring to self-sacrifice down here in actuality. Mesiras Nefesh amitis she'ein ba einig, a true self-sacrifice that has no delight, reflecting that Ratzon of Hashem that's beyond the light. So, if Hashem's will in us is that same type of will, that like our will for Hashem, that is beyond the light, and expresses itself in ways that the light can't even express itself, so why is it necessary to have a remembrance? It seems to be a constant. He says in line 18, Vafal became still in all, and even in the innermost level, we need to affect the idea of remembrance. Though it's not possible that the essential will should be nullified, heaven forbid, still in all, it's possible that temporarily this will can be concealed. Hashem's Ratzon Atzmi. One could perhaps compare it also to the Ratzon Atzmi of a Yid. A Yid's Ratzon Atzmi comes to the fore when he's challenged in a matter of self-sacrifice, of Mesiras Nefesh, but not necessarily does every moment of the day is the person aware of and feel and have the Ratzon Atzmi, and it doesn't necessarily manifest himself in the way he acts during the day, not according to his Ratzon Atzmi. In a similar vein, not obviously in the same manner, Hashem's Ratzon Atzmi could not be in a revealed way, even though it's always there, but it won't be revealed. So he says in line 21, that's the idea of saying the psukim of Zechroinus, we bring proof from psukim of Torah. Through this we affect that the remembrance should be internal, zoicher habris, remembering the bris, krisis bris Avram, the bris, the covenant that Hashem made with Avram. And even more in depth, krisis bris, the Moshe the bris that Hashem made with Moshe concerning tshuva. So when we affect to awaken that rotzen of Hashem, of those krisis bris, through that the remembrance comes out also in the external, like we said, in the physical matters of this world, which is the remembrance of Noach. That with Noach you remembered with love. The remembrance of Noach, we said earlier, matters to the whole Seder Ishtalshalos, because it's not just, like another Mamarm the Rebbe says, the Mabel was not just in the physical world, but it ruined and destroyed the whole Seder Ishtalshalos. And by remembering in the physical, it ensures there should be the whole Seder Ishtalshalos the way it's supposed to be. Until below 10 handbreadths in all the needs of a person. Now we're going to get back to the question that we asked, why is this Zikaron specifically or accomplished through Dvar Halacha? Not just Torah or Torah mitzvahs in general, this return of Hashem to Seder Ishtalshalos. According to this, we can explain the statement of our Chazal, that a person should not take leave of his friend only out of a matter of halacha, because through that he will remember it. In this we explained earlier that from the perspective of Seder Ishtalshalos, and the whole Seder Ishtalshalos came into being for the sake of a revelation, that this came about because of the will of the Creator, because Hashem wanted to have a home down here below. There's the descent of the neshama from above, migra rama from a high building, till it came down down below to a deep pit, that the neshama comes down in all the measures and boundaries of the world. There could be a matter of concealment and covering. That's the idea of Adam taking leave of his fellow, Adam being Hashem and Knesset Yisrael being the fellow. Therefore, we need to do something so there should be he should remember him. Similar to what we say in the Rosh Hashanah davening, that or the reason for the Rosh Hashanah Psukim Zechroinus, so that your remembrance should come before me for good. What does this mean? To awaken and inspire the root of Neshamas Yisrael. The way it's in the inner level of Pnimis above, that's why it says Lefonai, to my Pnimis, to Hashem's Pnimis. Until a level of Pnimius that's even higher than Chachma. We said before, there's the Yichud Chitzayni of Chachma Bina, that's Noach, and then there's the Yichud Pnimi of Chachma Bina, that's for the Lakus and so on. And it's even higher than the level of the light, like we said before, the Ratzon that's higher than the light. This is the Ratzon of the essence that's above. Al-Derech, this is similar to what is that takes place in Rosh Hashanah. That in Rosh Hashanah we have to affect the remembrance of the internal connection. Since on Rosh Hashanah all the levels return back to its earlier state. Since it returns to its earlier state, you have to go from the innermost level above to begin drawing down again. Therefore, we need to have the drawing down of the Gilui from a level much higher than the level to which it returned. We got to go back to the source higher than where it returned to. The original source, the original levels, the will of the essence, that's beyond intellect and the light. Now we're going to get to the answer to that question. This is accomplished specifically, not Torah mitzvahs, or not only or not limited to Torah mitzvahs, but especially specifically through a matter of halacha. In the Geras HaKodesh, it's explained at length that what the Chazal say, Kol Hashoyna halachas b'chol yom. Whoever studies halachas, reviews, repeats halachas daily, is assured to be one that has olam haba. So the Alter Rebbe explains why halachas daika. What's unique about halacha? The halachas over there, the supernal will is found in a revealed way. In Torah Shebiksav, or even in the rest of Torah Shebal Peh, before we get to the halacha, we still don't know what Hashem's ratzon is, how to put on tefillin, what am I supposed to do or not do on Shabbos. In the halacha, that is Hashem's will. In the other parts of Torah, that's Hashem's seichel, Hashem's chokhmah. In the halacha, that's directly Hashem's will. How do we bond that the essential will down here below should be connected with the essential will above? So this is accomplished not through a topic that's based on intellect, through generally studying Torah. The greater the quality of the intellect is, the greater you might reach this ratzon. No. Not even through a greater level of delight, let's say in the fulfillment of mitzvahs, specifically through the level of will. That's the level of dvar halacha. In the halacha, you're seeing what Hashem's will is, undiluted, the way it is. Without commingling other things in addition to the will. This is the will. You're allowed to do this, you don't do this, you're supposed to do that. Like the Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe concludes, in the halacha psuka, the great concept of a clear, ruled halacha, and this is the entire depth of the supernal will. So on top of page Zion, he's going to go back to the story about that any place that Adam did not say should be settled was not settled, the connection with this whole topic. Top of Yud Zion, Messiah, and the Maimer Chazal concludes, Ad Karton Milsa, you reminded me of something. Any land that Adam Rishon decreed for settlement was settled. Any land that Adam Rishon did not decree for it to be settled was not settled. The idea behind this is, like to explain the Maimer, Adam Rishon, who parts of Adam Kadmon. Adam Rishon is the image of, it's referring to the entire stature of the levels called Adam Kadmon, Ak. That's the highest level in Seder Ishtalshlos after the Tzimtzum. Ukzeiras Adam Rishon, when we talk about that Adam Rishon decreed that a place should be settled, Umachshava Hagnumad Adam Kadmon, that's the early thought of Ak, all the actions of people and their matters are according to the decree of the divine providence, the way it arose in the early thought of Ak. But Protis Yoser, more specifically, there are two approaches. And it's Shagazar Allah, Adam Rishon Lisyashva, land that Adam Rishon decreed to be settled was settled. The Eretz Shaloi Gazar Allah, Adam Rishon Liyishav Loi Nisyashva, and the land that Adam Rishon did not decree to be settled was not settled, as he will explain what these two things are in Avodas Hashem next Monday, Mirz Hashem.